All right, good morning all. Thank you for joining us. It's great to see so many faces and have so many on today. Before we get started, I did want to introduce our new QARN, Jamie Miller. Jamie, if you could just say hi and wave so you pop up on everyone's screen.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Jamie's joining Jennifer Waters and Brandy Branham to do our Med QA reviews, but she's also available to consult. So if you ever need connected with one of our nurses, feel free to just email provider support and we'll get you connected with someone who's available. On the agenda today, first we have Jenny Flowers talking about MUI and COVID trends. Jen will be talking about some statewide updates, especially as it relates to ADA. And then I will be talking about the provider sustainability program. Leah Snyder, Superintendent Leah Snyder, was going to join us today, and she still hopes to, but she does have a conflict. So thanks for the reminder to record the meeting. Oh, I'm recording. Okay, perfect. She still hopes to join briefly if she's able to, but if not, you're stuck with me. All right, Jenny, you want to go ahead and get started? Jen, do you see Jenny on here? I saw her earlier, I thought, but I don't see her any longer. Okay, Jen, do you want to go ahead and begin?
Sure, I can do that. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to cover mainly changes that are coming into play, coming into effect here in the next few weeks, and then some that will come first of the year. As Karen said, mostly related to day program and day services, but there's a couple of other things. I'm going to share my PowerPoint. And then there was also a memo that came out Monday from the department, which I think is causing a little confusion. So after we go over my presentation, I will talk about that. And I have a document that Karen already, I believe, posted and you had the link to, so that should help clarify things. So let me start with the presentation and pull it up. Okay, let's see. Of course, it's not cooperating. Sorry, I'm not getting cooperation. Let me try again. Karen, are you able to see my presentation? Karen, can you see it? Okay.
I can, sorry.
That's okay, I'm just making sure. With all these screens, it's hard to know. Okay, so we're gonna talk about some waiver updates, as I mentioned. These are the three things we'll be talking about. We're gonna talk about the level 1 waiver budget. We're gonna talk about those day changes that Karen mentioned, and we'll talk about the rate increases that are coming. We talked about this in our last meeting, so this should not be a surprise, but I just wanted to remind everyone, during the pandemic, we've been able to utilize individuals' level 1 budget fully, meaning we did not have to stick to our what we previously knew was kind of the buckets. So the specific budgets, the limits for day services, NMT, and then their sort of residential budget, and then those emergency budgets we're used to. So that's going to remain in place from now until July 1st of 2022. At that point, we're going to switch to a flat capped budget. So it'll operate much like the self waiver does now. If you're familiar with that, those dollar amounts should look familiar because they're going to match. So for a child, the cap will be $30,000. For adults, the cap will be $45,000. And that'll be a hard cap, and it will include all services. So an individual's team will work with that person to look at what their needs are and figure out from the service package under the level 1 waiver, which services best meet their needs, and they will not have the sub budgets they have to adhere to. So it should continue to allow us more flexibility. We found during the pandemic that's been really helpful to people. And so I think that's a really good change. Karen, I do see something in the chat. Is that a question for me? Oh, nope, that's you. Okay, great. Send a link. So that's what's going on with the level 1 budget. Overall, I think it's a really good change, and we'll just keep you posted on our work behind the scenes. Right now, there's nothing different going on. As we get closer to that 7/1 deadline, we'll have more to talk about. And now it doesn't want to move. Okay, there we go. Okay, the bulk of what I want to talk with you about today is about the adult day support vocab changes that are coming. And in general, what you're going to see, and if you watch the rules that come out, it's going to be a little confusing. So I would advise that you kind of follow this and what we're going to provide rather than trying to follow the rules. And in terms of just watching what's going on and understanding what's really happening. And the reason for that is many of these rules that you're going to see come out are simply rules to get into rule things that have been in place since the beginning of the pandemic through Appendix K. So what they had to do was put things in rule that we just simply were doing under Appendix K, and that's part of the process that we have to do. So you're going to see some rules come into place that we know are temporary. And so rather than talking about them by themselves, we're going to talk about them in terms of what's happening now with the rules that are coming into play, and then what to expect. A lot of the changes are going to occur a second round in January of 22. So I'm going to talk about both sets of changes at the same time, because it just doesn't make sense to me to talk about one and not the other. But you will not see all these rules out there. You will see the October 15th rules, but not all the January rules are out there yet. So that might be a little confusing. The first thing, we did talk about this last time, so this should not be a surprise. During the pandemic, we were permitted to allow the adult day services to be provided in people's homes. That's no longer permitted starting October 15th. We did look, and we don't believe we have any of this going on. If you are still doing this, please notify Nancy Bistry or myself so that we can work with the team to make sure we make other arrangements, because effective October 15th, that is no longer permitted. The next thing that's going to have an October 15th implementation date is the termination of the community integration add-on. And that's been in place for a few years now. And there's a couple of things that are going to take the place of that, and it's going to be two transitions that we'll talk about. So it is going away in terms of being an add-on, but there are things that are taking its place. And so if you are doing that work where you're taking people out in small groups, we'll talk about the size of those groups here in just a moment, you will still be able to do that, and you will still be able to get that higher rate, but the codes are going to be different. They're going to transition once on October 15th, and they're going to transition again in January, which is a little bit unfortunate because that's extra work for all of us and for all of you, but we'll talk about what that's going to look like. So from October 15th through the end of this calendar year, those services are going to be reclassified and be authorized using those step codes that we've been doing. You can still do step the way we've been doing it as far as the community step or the virtual step. The one that's going away is what we already mentioned, which is the in-home step. So just like we talked about, you won't be able to do in-home, but you can continue to do step as you've known it through the pandemic. You can do it virtually, or you can do it out in the community. You also can continue to do that in groups of 5 through the end of this calendar year. And again, you're going to get that higher rate, that C acuity rate through the end of this calendar year for those services. One thing that has been straightened out that was a problem early on is that you can bill traditional day services. So if you operate a day's program that has a building, you can do that on the same day that you do step, but only if you're billing both services in the 15-minute units. So for example, perhaps you have somebody, Karen comes into your day program and spends 2 hours in the morning doing whatever you're doing in the building. And then she goes out with a small group for the rest of her day. And so you could bill the morning hours in those 15-minute units for the traditional day program codes. And then you could use those step codes to bill that afternoon when you took her out that small group if it qualified. And remember, those do need to be authorized distinctly by the county board. So we do have to have that either in the My Plan or using the one-page kind of quick add-on that we've used during the pandemic. If you're doing that, you want to make sure it's authorized. Karen, any questions that pop up in the chat before I move forward? Not yet? Okay. If you do have a question as we go through, if you could put it in the chat, I'll be sure to cover it. Okay, so we talked a little bit about transition 1, October 15th. I want to make sure that everyone understands how we're going to be handling this. With the ending of this community integration add-on on the 15th of October, we do have a list that we were provided by the state that shows us everyone who has an authorization for the community integration add-on. What we've found is that a good deal of those folks are not, the providers are not billing that service. And in talking with a number of our providers, it's pretty clear why. And that's because people simply don't have the staff mostly. And then also because some folks, depending on their situation, prefer to stay back in the facility in smaller groups to have less exposure to other people. And that makes a lot of sense. So what we're going to be doing from that list of people, we will go ahead and change anyone that the provider has been provided the service and billing the community integration add-on in the past 3 months, where we've authorized that community integration add-on and there's been billing for it in the past 3 months. We will go ahead and the funding specialist will switch those authorizations over from having the add-on applied to being authorized as step. Now, if we go and look and there's been no utilization, so we've authorized it and there's not been any billing under that, then we're not going to do that because there's no reason for us to take that extra time to do that if it's not going to be billed. And so if there's no utilization, we are going to reach out to those SSAs of those individuals and have a team discussion. So the team should talk about, hey, we'd authorize this add-on. It's not occurring. We're not going to authorize it unless something new is coming up where that's going to change. So just wanted you as providers to be aware that that's how we're going to be handling that. It sounds like around the state, I've talked to 3 other counties in the last couple of days, and it sounds like they're all going to be doing a very similar process. Kara, any questions on the add-on pop-up? Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is the virtual option. And so we did mention this earlier, but just to make sure we're very clear, you can continue to offer virtual adult day support or VOCAB services. Through the end of this calendar year, it will be authorized as STEP. And through the end of this calendar year, it will continue to pay at the C acuity rate. Effective 1/1 of next year, you can still continue to do virtual day services, but they're going to have new codes and they will pay out at that person's appropriate acuity rate. So you're going to continue to get that higher rate just through the end of this calendar year, and then it's going to revert to acuity-based payment starting in January of next year. We don't have those codes yet, I don't believe, but once we get those, we'll begin working on that as well. Karen, any questions about virtual pop-up there? No? Okay.
Jen, if I could interject here.
Yes, please do, Nancy.
In funding, we do not know particularly which individuals are getting virtual services. So if you could please let me know so we make sure to get those changed over to STEP, because they're not all listed as STEP right now for whatever reason. And because I saw one the other day where when reading the plan, I saw that it was virtual, but we did not have anything different than the regular code. So if you know we have the regular code, but you're doing virtual, please let me know so we can get it flipped over to STEP.
Yeah, and the one, thanks, I'm glad you pointed out, Nancy. The other thing I wanted to say about that, but forgot, is if you're doing virtual between now and the end of the year, we will flip it to STEP if you're doing it in those groups that qualify for STEP. So they have to be the smaller groups. I do know there's some, or there were some providers doing larger groups, and that's fine. You can continue to do that, but you won't need that switch to STEP because it won't qualify. You have to have that group of 5 or less. But if you're doing virtual and you're doing the small groups, please, like Nancy said, let us know so we can get you switched over. And then likewise, starting next year, we'll want to have the appropriate codes, but it is a roll up. So if you don't have it authorized as virtual and you're doing that first of next year, it's not going to make a difference because it's a roll up code, but we would like to get it correct. I hope that makes sense. Okay, some other things about STEP. STEP is going to end 12/31/2021, as we noted earlier. But when it does, it's going to be replaced by a new service. And you're actually going to see something in the communication that came out on Monday that's a little confusing. And I'll talk about that a little more after we get through this. But when STEP ends, the service is you're going to continue to be able to bill the same thing, get that same rate for most of it, other than the virtual, which we already talked about. But it's going to have a new name. So it's going to be called Community Integrated Adult Day Support, or Community Integrated Vocational Habilitation. That will come into effect on 1/1/22. And just some things to keep in mind about it. The group size will go back to being 4, which is what it always was prior to the pandemic. So you'll be limited to 4 or fewer people. You'll only be able to bill this service when it's in person in the community. And it will pay at that higher C acuity rate. And again, you'll still continue to be able to bill for this service as well as traditional day service on the same day, but only if both services are authorized and if you're billing both services in the 15-minute units. So if you're billing either of those on a daily rate, you will not be able to bill 2 at once. You can only pick one or the other. But if you're breaking down your day, billing 15 units, you can have more flexibility. And we know this is something many providers were asking for. So I hope that you find that useful. And because it's a roll-up code, we don't have to know, 3 hours, of Tuesday, Karen's gonna be in STEP, and 3 hours she's gonna be in traditional. We do need to authorize both of them and kind of estimate how much we think we're gonna have of each, which is always how we've handled the community integration add-ons. So we'll be looking at this in the same way, but because it's a roll-up code, it'll still be able to be billed and paid out so long as we have sufficient units and dollars available, which is the nice part of it. Likewise, in terms of the STEP, what we're going to do, we're going to handle this much like we're going to handle that community integration add-on when it ends. So we're going to be looking at every authorization we have for STEP. If it's been authorized and it's been utilized, we'll go ahead and flip those to the new service. Now, if there are situations where we can't tell if it's perhaps it's virtual, then like Nancy said, we're going to need to know that because it's going to be authorized differently. But if it's very clear that that's being done out in the community and there's been utilization, we'll flip those. And if not, we will contact the SSA to prompt a team discussion so we can figure out where to go starting next year with these authorizations. Nancy, before we move on, anything else on STEP that you want people to know? No? Okay, I put this in here, and you're going to see this other document that I'm going to pull up here in just a minute, because there's so much going on and so many moving parts that I for myself, as much as anyone else, wanted kind of a one-page glance at what's going on. Like I said, we have a number of different transitions, moving parts going on at once. So just to recap, back to 9/1, we ended those restart payments, which were people getting paid the C acuity back in facility-based programming. That ended 9/1. Now we have a couple of changes that are coming on 10/15. So we're no longer permitted to do day support in homes or vocab in homes. And then also on 10/15, the community integration add-on will end. At that point, qualifying services will be flipped over to STEP. That will remain in place through the end of the calendar year. And then another transition will occur, and we will transition those services, qualifying services, to the community integrated adult day support or vocational habilitation service. Again, regarding codes and rates, I know it's a little confusing, but STEP continues to pay at the C acuity rate. Okay, and it's going to be 10/15 through 12/31. And then once adult day support and vocab delivered in the community as STEP is limited to 5 or less, so you can continue with 5 through the end of the calendar year. But then starting 1/1/22, when the service flips to that new community integrated day support or vocab, we go back to the groups of 4. And lastly, virtual will return to being paid at actual acuity rates versus the enhanced rates, and that's going to come on 1/1 of next year. I know that's a lot. I'm surprised I haven't seen questions. Karen, am I missing any? Are there any questions in the comments?
Nothing yet.
Okay, does anyone have questions before we talk just for a moment about waiver rates? And then I'm going to flip to the other document just so you know what you have to look at. Nothing coming up there, Karen?
Nothing yet.
Okay, well, some reason it's
Great
going
job.
back. All right, last thing, just want to let everyone know that we talked about this a little last time. There is a waiver rate increase coming 1/1 of 22. And in preparation, we had begun quite a bit of time ago now, splitting non-calendar services at 12/31. And the reason we're doing that is that the department creates what they call a bot, and it goes in MSS behind the scenes, and it will automatically update, but it only catches services if they're either on the calendar or in non-calendar services if we've split them on the 12/31 split. So Nancy and her folks have been working on that for a while now, so you'll see that. And just to let you know, it's approximately 4% across all direct services. So if you have questions about rates, please reach out to Nancy. She and her team will be happy to help. And then I'm going to stop share for 1 second, and I'll pull up the other document, and I'll let you know why I created this. Okay, let me get rid of this one. Sorry, too many screens, too many screens. Okay. Karen, are you seeing my document now?
I am.
Okay, great. So just as you think you have all this understood and under control, a memo came out on Monday, and well, first of all, last week, let's back up to last week. There was a memo that came out from the department that you will see that they reissued the next day. They had the group sizes wrong on that one. Then this memo came out on Monday, and this Monday on the 4th, and it was, I thought, confusing, and I understood really clearly what was going on. So the memo that came out on Monday, it talked about the fact that we're changing over from this community integrated add-on and that we're moving it directly to community integrated adult day support. And it talked about the fact that STEP was ending and it was going to this. And so what was confusing is that there's a step in between that they didn't talk about. And the reason we have this in-between step, which is what we talked about that's going on from October 15th to the end of the calendar year, is that the MSS system where we go into the state site and authorize services is not ready yet. It hasn't been coded for those new services that come into play next January. And so what they had to do was utilize those existing step codes, which is why we're seeing 2 transitions. And so they just skipped that over that in the memo on the 4th. And so I think that's going to create quite a bit of confusion. So we created this just to provide clarification for ourselves as much as anyone else. But other counties are going to also use this, so you may see this again. So this just shows you in graphic form. On the 15th of October, that community integration add-ons going away. You're going to see those transition to STEP, okay, if they qualify. And then we're going to have another transition, December 31st. They're going to end the STEP codes. And that's when we'll change over to these new community integrated adult day support and vocab codes. As soon as they start getting in the system, we'll start doing it. They're not available yet. And then here we just have a summary, much like that table we just looked at, to give people a one-pager in visual form of all these things that are changing and transitioning. So Karen provided you with a link to this document. I hope it's helpful. Again, we created it for ourselves as much as anyone else because there's so many pieces and parts going on right now. So I hope that's helpful. There's a lot of things happening. I think overall it's all really good stuff, good changes, but it's hard to keep track of everything, especially when we're all so busy. And I know you all are out there scrambling around trying to hire staff and keep up with everything that you need to do, and having lots of changes on top of it is, I know, a challenge. So I hope that those are helpful to you. Nancy, anything I missed that you wanted to bring up and all that? Keeping our folks on our toes, right, Nancy?
Yes.
If you do have questions, again, feel free to put them in the chat while we're on here. But if you think of something later, feel free to reach out to Nancy or myself. We're happy to help.
Jen, they want you to repeat your entire presentation again.
Jamie, I'm sorry. No.
It is being recorded and we'll post it up on our
There you go.
communications page later
You can watch
today.
it at your leisure. Maybe if you have insomnia, it'll put you right to sleep. All right.
All right. Jenny's back with us. She had some Zoom issues. Would you like to sort of talk about COVID and any MUI trends you're seeing?
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Sorry, I had major Zoom issues or computer. I'm not sure. I had to restart everything. So I'm here. Not really a whole lot to report. Honestly, I don't know if that's good news or bad news at this point. I did want to share the latest numbers, and I'll share my screen just so you guys can see kind of what I've been tracking. So if you'll see at the top, this is what September looked like. September, we had a total of 30 positive cases, which is actually quite a bit. The previous month, I think we had 40, but we had a large hotspot, if you will, at a couple of our larger homes. So that was real kind of high for September. Most importantly, down here, you'll see on September 30th, ironically, we hit 500 positive cases. So that's from the beginning of the pandemic. So that's where we're at. We did have one additional confirmed COVID-related death that we just received the death certificate. We were kind of waiting on that. So one of these numbers probably will go away. So just, kind of see where we're at. Down here, there's, the little chart. We are fortunately, not going to spike back up where we were, but I think it's important just that kind of where we're at. I will say that this is interesting in here. When you look at the ages, we're seeing a lot more folks that are younger, those who can't be vaccinated, right? So the 12 and under folks. And then of course, a lot of these were with family. So people that are not in, residential settings. I think that our providers, you guys have done a great job with making sure that those who can and want to get vaccinated are vaccinated. So that's just kind of where we are with numbers. And I don't know if Karen will probably share more. We are, I think with regard to the boosters or the third dose, however you want to look at it, it's really important for folks that meet that criteria. And there's some criteria out there. I think that our folks in congregate settings will meet the criteria. Of course, anybody 65 and older are already eligible for it. And I think that it's pretty readily available. We are hoping, I guess, if you will, that we would be able to offer another vaccine clinic. But at this point, we haven't really, there's been no movement on us doing that. So I would really encourage you to work with the individual's PCP or, those types of things. Good, maybe CVS, yes, taking folks, signing them up for the boosters. And I know there's lots of links out there. I mean, there still are lots and lots of vaccine sites available, as well as testing sites. So I just encourage you to work with those folks to get those boosters and third doses. So really that's about all I have for COVID. I will just briefly touch on, unfortunately, last month, September, wait, what, I don't even know what month we're in, September, we did have 2 accidental suspicious deaths. And the other reason I bring that up is because they're my 2, I guess, biggest areas that, we focus on. One was a choking and one was a fall. So those are 2 areas that we really, said during our stakeholders group that we were going to focus on. And unfortunately, we had both in the same month. So just, kind of wanted to put that out there. I think that in each of these situations, I do believe that, and we're still looking into them. I think that the lack of staff was definitely a contributing factor. I think that, accidents happen, don't get me wrong, but these are just 2 of the areas that I think that we could have the biggest impact on, right? So, preventative measures and those types of things. So just kind of wanted to put that out there as well. So I don't think I have anything else. Obviously, if you guys need PPE or you have any issues, concerns, we do still have some test kits available, not a ton. I had to jump through a lot of hoops to get these last ones. So, if you need them, let me know. I think they are, unless they extend the date again, they are only good through the end of November, I believe. So if anybody needs them, please let me know. I don't want them to go to waste.
And to use them, there's 50 in a box. Is that right, Jenny?
40
in a box. Okay.
Yeah. So if you want to double up with a smaller agency, or whatever the case may be, the one thing that I will say with that is that, and you'd have to read all the directions. We do need to still make sure that if people are testing positive, that it is getting reported to the right folks. So there's a QR code on there that will upload that positive result. And then the other thing is that notifying the health department that you've had a positive. So we do still need, even though, you may be administering the test, we still need to make sure that the right people are aware that you do have a positive. So.
Thanks, Jenny. Any questions for Jenny? Will I get my PowerPoint up? All right, can you see my screen, Jenny or Jen or anyone? Okay, great. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the Workforce Sustainability Program. We sent a memo out in early September, just letting you know that we were rolling out this initiative. So along with the Workforce Initiative Program, our Sustainability Program, sorry, I'll also cover a little bit about the statewide and regional efforts to assist with this, the DSP shortage. We'll talk in detail a little bit more about the Workforce Sustainability Program, the areas that we thought we would be able to reimburse providers for costs, some errors that we're seeing that are delaying processing, how we're processing the sustainability program requests, and then a follow-up survey that we'll be completing. Finally, I'm going to share some other local efforts we have in place or we're thinking about to support providers as well. Just to begin, there's a lot going on statewide about the DSP shortage. I know Leah is meeting frequently with other superintendents just to talk and listen and hear what they're doing and to problem solve. Regionally, I was invited to meet with our regional cohorts, which is Montgomery, Greene, Preble, Claremont, Butler, and Warren. And we all got together and talked and shared about what we were doing to support providers. And we really wanted to have some consistency across the board. We know a lot of the surrounding provider communities offer in-house trainings and in-house BCIs. I think historically we did a little bit of that training in-house, and earlier this year we did BCIs, but just with the quantity of providers that we have, it's not feasible for us to continue that long-term. And we also, just because we're a large county and there are a lot of resources, we thought forcing DSPs to come to our location at a specific hour also isn't very convenient. We know DSPs often work multiple jobs, so we wanted to add a little bit more flexibility with training and also the BCI. The other thing we know is that providers are eating increased costs as it relates to hiring, training, and retention. We've heard story after story of DSPs that have made it through the extensive training to become a DSP and never show up for their first day of work. So we know the margins are getting tighter and tighter for providers profit-wise, and we want to make sure that they're continued to able to offer quality services and get DSPs. Again, we know there's increased turnover, and Jen did mention that for direct services, there is an increase going in at 4% in January. We know this isn't enough with things that are going in the field, trying to get DSPs in houses. So we wanted to we know that there's limitations to the current Medicaid reimbursement rates. As a result of this, I think we mentioned that Cindy Wright from CSI presented to our board about concerns, and they invested $1 million through the end of the year to help with the workforce sustainability. So there's a few different areas that I'm going to talk about that the workforce sustainability program is meant to support. One of the main ones is hiring and retention efforts. Before I start talking about hiring and retention efforts, just as I'm going to talk about what documentation is required to be submitted. For all of these different things, you must complete the workforce sustainability form and also the completed W-9. So I'm not going to repeat that with each one. We are offering just a flat reimbursement for $700 for any DSP that is newly hired. So in order to request that reimbursement, you'll just submit to us the required documents, including the DSP's name, the date of hire, and proof of completed training. And once that's submitted to us, we keep a log of it, and then you would get reimbursed a flat rate of $700. Similarly, for annual renewal training, we're offering $500 per DSP. And you may think these numbers are a little bit arbitrary, and perhaps they are, but if you remember earlier this year, we did the BCI training, and we also did, we offered reimbursement for DSP training. And so I was able to look at the cost associated on average with getting the MedCert training, the CPR first aid training, and other required things, and sort of figured out a cost associated with the trainings. And we also wanted to make sure that DSP's time was able to be reimbursed on that as well. So we figured out the hours that it takes to complete all the trainings roughly. And I think we planned for between $13 and $15 for being able to reimburse in these areas per hour of the DSP training. The final area is the DSP longevity add-on, and we don't talk about this a whole lot, but if for an employee that completes this after September 1, 2021, the training for this DSP can begin prior to 9/1, but we're asking that their final training happens at or after 9/1/21. We are reimbursing up to $900, and this goes to the provider, and it reimburses for the 60 hours of coursework. The coursework, DODD recommends that you take it through Direct Course, which is free of charge. It's a little difficult to navigate Direct Course. When I sent out the original memo, which I'll show you later where you can find it in case you need to locate it, and directions on getting into a Direct Course, it's a little bit tricky to navigate, so I'll show you where to find those things later on. To be eligible for the longevity add-on, an employee has to complete the 60 hours of coursework, approved coursework, and also 2 years of experience, which is documented on an employment experience form, which I'll also show. Looks like I have a chat. How long is the rule in effect? Are you talking, Emily, are you talking about the workforce sustainability? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Currently it's through 2021, and I think there's a potential that it could be renewed, which I'll talk about a little bit at the end. That's why we are going to be surveying sort of how the money is used and positive effects. I think what we have found with trying to support the workforce is that we don't know what's going to work. We don't know what's going to help. And we don't know that. We want to make sure that we're spending money on something that truly works. Sorry, my slides aren't advancing either. All right, I'm back. Just as a reminder, for providers that do bill a longevity add-on, it allows an additional $1.56 for each unit billed of HPC. So it really benefits both the provider and the DSP for once they become eligible for this. If you have DSPs that have worked 2 years in the field. We aren't offering this form of reimbursement for ADA settings because the longevity add-on cannot be billed for ADA providers. Similarly, if a DSP is working for more than one agency, we would only offer the longevity add-on one time. The next area that we're offering reimbursement through the Workforce Sustainability Program is sort of a smaller area that we're hearing a need, but also a cost that's not able to be reimbursed anywhere else. We know that many providers that work across the state due to staff shortages in Cincinnati have had to shift staff from other counties down to Hamilton County. So in one instance, we had a staff member come from an agency in Montgomery County and move to Cincinnati for a month. So for situations that happens, we are able to reimburse up to $130 a day for hotel costs. And to request that reimbursement, you would just need the hotel receipt and then the other associated documents. We know that there may be other similar things that providers have to do to fill shifts that are like this. So if there is something that sort of falls in this area, feel free to send me an email or send it to provider support at Hamilton DDS, and we can definitely consider it. Any other questions so far? Okay. The other area that we have seen probably the most requests so far is the overtime reimbursement. We know that DSPs are working an astronomical amount of hours filling shifts, which we really appreciate. So with this area, we are able to reimburse the provider for the additional halftime cost once a DSP works over 40 hours a week. We may have given a few people mixed information because we did not quite understand the question, but it looks like some people's pay week began in late August, and so overtime started accumulating after 9/1. If that is the case with your agency, we are able to approve that week of overtime. Jen, can you let me know what question popped up, please?
It was actually me. I had a question
Okay.
come to me not too long ago asking if we were doing this for independent providers, and the answer to that is no, because they're billing overtime already. This is only for us to help offset that cost that agency providers, they don't get to bill overtime. So they're billing the same rate no matter if they're paying their employee overtime or not. So this is our effort to try to offset that cost to the provider. This is not, independents are not eligible for this.
Thank you. We did create a provider overtime worksheet for providers to complete, sort of detailing the cost so that we can see in a quick look through what staff are being paid, the total hours they work, the straight time, the overtime, and the total cost. You're welcome to use that form, or we've heard that larger providers, that format that we created doesn't exactly work. So as long as you submit something where we can clearly see the requirements on that form, feel free to modify the document or create your own. We really need something that computes the totals, and we can quickly compare to the payroll that you submit as well. Any questions on the overtime reimbursement? Again, ADA providers aren't eligible for that because typically their hours are a little bit more set. For providers that provide both ADA and residential services, if you have ADA staff that are working residential, which causes them to go into overtime, that would be considered for the overtime reimbursement. We also, the reason we sent this out in early September, we didn't have it ready to go earlier than that, so we couldn't really have a meeting and present, so sorry about that. But we did want to let you know that we did want to support DSPs and honor them during DSP Appreciation Week. So we offered up to $25 per DSP to celebrate DSPs during DSP Appreciation Week. And for that reimbursement, we would just need receipts for purchases and list of DSPs. I want to cover a little bit. We have received a lot of requests so far, and there's some things that we are having to send back, which is causing delays. So one of the main things is that we aren't receiving all the documents that we need. And we're seeing this especially if providers are requesting more than one type of reimbursement on the form. So if you're requesting money to hire one new staff and also $100 for DSP appreciation, the provider may be only including the associated documents to hire one DSP. So if you are requesting multiple reimbursements, just make sure you include all the documents on our end. We are also asking, the form is in PDF. We are fine. It should be totaling the totals at the bottom, but for some browsers, we're finding that it does not. Please make sure to type in numbers. Don't handwrite things as much as possible, just so that we can clearly see what you're requesting. Finally, if we send back and say that we need additional documents, it helps us if you send everything back together, including the original workforce agreement, so that we don't have to try to locate the entire packet. We're receiving a lot of requests and a lot of documents, so it's taking a lot of time to dig back through and try to find, especially as you start to send multiple requests for agencies, which paperwork aligns together. As I mentioned, we are receiving a lot of requests. We're asking that providers only send one request in each month, just so that we can more timely respond and manage the workload on our end. Requests should be sent to provider support at hamiltondds.org. We are taking we're trying to get these processed under 2 weeks. I know we are just starting a new month, so we hope to be able to get to 2 weeks. If we find that we're unable to do that, I'll let you know in the next provider newsletter what delays we're seeing on our end. Once a request is received from us and processed, we will email back that we will process that request. And we began doing that yesterday before we weren't responding to that. So if you send in a request already and you're like, I didn't hear anything, that's because we weren't responding, that we had processed it. Once we process the documents on our end, we send the request to the Southwest Ohio Council of Government. We call it SWOCOG, and they mail out the payment directly to the provider. And we're seeing that SWOCOG is reimbursing generally within 7 business days. All right. Once we get done, Marilyn, I will show you where to find all the forms and also the attachments from today. Thank you. What's the other chat say, Jen? Oh, great. Again, we want to see how these funds are used and how they help out. So we will we will probably be sending out quarterly surveys with some questions, just asking how the funds were used. If you used it to hire and train staff, how are those funds used? Are those staff still with you? We just want to be able to measure some outcome with the amount of funds that we're authorizing, and hopefully with some positive impact, perhaps we can go back to the board and see if they can extend the grants. So this is the website where we keep our communications, and you can find all the Workforce Sustainability Program. I'll show you how to get there in just a second too as well, and how to navigate around. So thinking about other ways that we're trying to really support providers, we are continuing with our PPE pass out. So if you are an agency that would like to be on our mailing list to sign up for PPE pass outs, please email providersupport@hamiltondds.org. We are still passing out about once every month or so at our Kingsley location, and providers that have requested PPE, we just send out a Survey Monkey just to ask if they're going to be there. We're continuing to promote DSP Ohio to help people looking for jobs in our fields be connected with agency providers. We have started running Facebook ads, and we are also going to start running Google ads later shortly to help increase clicks and views to DSP Ohio, which will hopefully lead to more jobs. The other thing that we're hearing that's going on is providers are connecting with each other to help fill gaps. So I think there was one provider that they needed to transport an individual across state lines to get to a facility, and it was going to cost about $7,000 using Ambulette service. We were able to connect a few providers together, and they were able to bill transportation services, which allowed the provider to go along. It was just a great solution that was more affordable and also met the individual's needs much better. We continue to share information on our provider forum and newsletter. And we're also being invited to a lot of groups to hear about their strategic planning efforts. We are meeting with small groups of providers when we're invited. We're hearing things that they're doing. We know some providers are out there really thinking about retention efforts and training efforts to try to hold on to DSPs longer. And we're also always willing to participate in one-on-one discussions and ideas. So we know that we can't think of everything, and you guys are our biggest resource out there. So please reach out as you have other ideas, things that you think would be beneficial. Things that we're currently doing on our end to also help, we're trying to collaborate a little bit more with Ohio Means Jobs to really promote DSP Ohio. Promoting at one site doesn't really work into their current system, so we're trying to figure out a way around that. So hopefully we'll have some positive outcome with them publicizing DSP Ohio and getting potential job seekers connected. The other thing that we are looking into, we're trying to see if this will work HIPAA-wise and privacy-wise, but we want to develop a resource sharing app that we can invite providers to participate in so that they can share availability of things or also share when they have a need so that providers can sort of barter and support together, because we're hearing more of that happening. We just want to make an easier way for that to happen. And that is all I have. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and also start sharing the provider site so I can show you where to locate things a little bit. Can you let me know if this is reshared? Can you see the provider page? Great. So this is our provider page, the homepage, hamiltondds.org/providers. You'll find a lot of our support regarding COVID and provider resources as well. So if you ever think, oh, what did they say in that provider newsletter? Or I wanted to watch that recording. If you click on communications and scroll down, you can see all the workforce sustainability program documents. And then our provider newsletter, and then the provider forums are also down here. So the recorded live forum will be uploaded shortly, and all the documents and PowerPoints that were shared today are also available there. If you have questions, I talked about direct course, the training link for the sustainability add-on for DSPs that have worked more than 2 years in the field. If you want information about the direct course, you can find it in the announcement and program details. Thank you, Jamie. So hopefully the workforce sustainability program was a nice surprise, and hopefully it will help you guys out. Any questions about the program? You guys are so quiet today. It's hard not being in person. That is all I have on the agenda. Do you guys have anything that you have questions about or want to share? Give it another minute.
But it was good information, and I appreciate that.
Sounds good. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
If you think of questions later about the adult day stuff, I know it's a lot to take in. Hopefully those one-page documents help a little bit in the presentation that I shared, but please reach out to Nancy or myself if you do have questions, because it is a lot. Just so you know, also, we did send this information out to our SSAs this week, and I will be going around to team meetings to help them think through all these changes, because there is a lot for them to take on as well. So if you run into any struggles, if SSAs that you are working with maybe don't quite understand, let us know. We'll work with them individually, but we are going around over the course of the next couple of weeks and going through all this in detail with them so that everybody understands. And our funding team's already up on this and really understands what's going on. So also use your funding specialist as a resource. So hopefully this goes well. I think it's all good stuff, but you know, changes are always tough.
All right, if nothing else, Jen, We do have a provider that is short DSPs with MedCert 2. So if you have any DSPs potentially available that would be willing to pick up shifts with another provider that are certified in MedCert 2, if you could reach out to me or provider support at Hamilton DDS, just so that we can connect and support.
And I think that that provider would also be open to potentially subcontracting with your agency if you'd rather handle it that way. If you have staff that are available nights, weekends, days, whatever, I think they would be interested in either way, either people coming to work and be hired by them or to subcontract with you if you're interested. So please reach out if you have anyone.
Thank you guys so much. So great seeing you today.
I did have
Someone did, Karen, post about a reimbursement. So I'll work with you directly on that, Karen. They sent the message to me. So
Okay.
Karen and I will follow up with you directly about that.
Thank you all.